All right. So if you've been with me this morning, you know that the Zachary Hughes murder trial took forever to start, and it just started, and now they're on an hour break. So I'm
Defendants
here with
present, all counsel
Monica.
present, jury, and alternates present. Good morning.
I
would have
rolled the
sworn that
dice.
someone
They
would have forgotten.
haven't been
You're very
on
impressive.
time, but
Very
they are
impressive.
today.
And I hope your time off
myself
was pleasant.
To the corner.
You know, I'm a judge here. I got to take out the trash at home. You know what I mean? So I did nothing but work. So I hope your time was better than mine. People may call the next witness.
Thank you. People call Officer Efren Gutierrez.
Do we have an issue?
I can't believe they started on time. This is a miracle.
The cause now pending before this court. So the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat in the witness stand.
Thank you.
Yes, so you may have to go on mode.
No, no.
They killed the audio. They'll turn it back on in just a second.
Turn the switch off. Excuse me a second. Detective, state and spell your first and last name, please.
Sure. Efren Gutierrez. First name is E-F-R-E-N. Gutierrez is G-U-T-I-E-R-R-E-Z.
You may proceed.
Thank you. What do you do for a living?
I'm a police detective for the city of Los Angeles, currently assigned to Mission Division detectives.
What division, I'm sorry?
Mission.
Is that an area of Los Angeles then?
Yes, it's one of the stations.
Okay, and that's with LAPD?
Correct.
And how long have you been a peace officer?
30 years.
Back in January of 2017, what was your assignment?
I was assigned to Operations Valley Bureau Homicide.
And what does that entail?
It's the Bureau level homicide unit, which covers the San Fernando Valley, all the LAPD jurisdiction in the San Fernando Valley.
Did you then respond to 5012 Queen Victoria in Woodland Hills regarding a killing that occurred there?
Yes, I did.
Okay, what time did you get there?
Just before 7, about 6:45 p.m.
Up on the screen is what's previously been marked as People's 9, page 9. Is that the location where you responded?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so when you got there then, what was your responsibility?
So I arrived there and waited for the rest of the homicide squad that was on call. Once they arrived, I did a walkthrough of the crime scene, which included the interior of the house and the backyard, and basically a preliminary viewing of the scene.
And in that preliminary viewing, what did you notice as far as the crime scene?
So I recall seeing blood-stained evidence on the kitchen floor near a slider. The decedent was an adult male in the patio, kind of in a crouch position. There's some wet blood on the ground. Also, I recall seeing, I believe it was a master bedroom, appeared to have been ransacked. There was clothes on the ground and dresser drawers were open.
When you did this initial walkthrough, are you meeting with any of the detectives there?
Yes, as I said, the homicide on-call squad was there. I did a walkthrough with Detective Gene Parshall. He was going to be the lead investigator on the case. And Rob Flirday, Ryan Verna, and Gabe Bucknell.
Now, do you recognize the person sitting over here in the blue blazer with the long dark hair, the female? Do you recognize her?
Yes.
How do you recognize her?
I recall doing a walkthrough with her and Detective Parshall at the termination of the crime scene investigation.
Thank you. So, is that a typical scenario where you walk through the residence with someone that lives there? Can you explain why you did that?
So it's standard operating procedure with the LAPD. If a search warrant is served at a location, whoever has control or the owner of a specific location, whether it's a house or a business, we take before photos and after photos and then do a walkthrough with whomever's going to be in control of the location once the police depart, and basically describe what we did as far as our investigation and whether or not we seized any items.
So, did you spend a fair amount of time with the defendant then going to the different rooms and showing her items that were recovered?
Probably about 15 minutes tops.
Okay. Did you talk to her during this time?
I don't think I said anything to her directly.
Okay. So, while you were with the defendant, was anybody else with you when you walked through this house?
Detective Parshall was.
Okay. Did you notice anything unusual about the defendant?
Yes. So my understanding, it was the wife of the decedent. She wasn't crying. No tears. There was no runny nose. Seemed kind of odd. That didn't look like someone that was grieving.
Have you conducted homicide investigations before where you've had to interact with family members, loved ones, something of that nature?
Yes. So I worked homicide for 18 years. During that time, I personally handled 108 homicide cases, and then additional probably 300, give or take, undetermined or unnatural death scenes. So yeah, I interact with family grieving at these type of calls.
And this particular scenario, the defendant struck you as unusual?
Yes, I mean, I'm well aware that people grieve differently, but I thought her behavior seemed odd, a little forced. And I recall telling Detective Parshall that I said she's full of crap when we walked out of the house.
Okay, thank you. I have no more questions.
Detective Gutierrez, how long did you arrive at the scene after the murder had taken place? As far as you know?
Yes.
How long after?
I think it had been a couple hours. The scene had already been secured, so I arrived right around 6:45 p.m.
Okay. And when was it that you saw the defendant?
It was the next morning, so now it would have been the 24th at around 9 a.m.
That's the first time you saw her?
Yes.
Did you talk to anyone at the scene the night before about what her condition was, her mental condition, emotional condition, and so forth?
No.
So this is the first observation you had of her was the next morning after the murder. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's when you observed what you said you thought was kind of unusual.
Yes.
And you told that to Detective Parshall?
Yes.
And you wrote a report?
No.
Did you prepare a report of your investigation or conduct at the scene?
No, the scene was processed by the criminalist, so I did not prepare a report.
Did you prepare anything, any written report or any written notes in a pawn file, anything like that? Documentation you were done?
No, the only documentation of my actions would have been in the chronologue, and whether or not I wrote it or Detective Parshall wrote it. He was the lead investigator for a few days before it was transferred to a different entity within the LAPD.
So either you or Detective Parshall, you said, prepared the chron file?
The chronological log.
And tell us what the chronological log is.
It's a synopsis of the investigative process. Sometimes it documents follow-up information, people that are interviewed, and requests, things of that nature.
It's supposed to document a summary of the conduct of the officers who took part in an investigation or search of a crime scene or whatever you did at the crime scene. So is that correct?
It's written in brevity form, so small snippets of information, yes.
Okay. And did you have any input in the chron file for the time that you were at the scene?
I may have, I don't recall though.
Could I approach Your Honor? And
Yeah, you can approach it.
I'm showing you what appears to be a chron file. It's got some highlights. You can ignore those, but I think...
Is this the chronological log?
Yes.
Okay.
If you could just look at to yourself, and is that the chronological log that was prepared throughout the case, but specifically has entries for the night that or morning that you were there at the scene?
Yes, just a few pages if you don't mind.
No, sure.
Okay, yes, it does appear to be the chronological log, although I don't see any entries that I made personally.
Well, your name is mentioned in some of the sections of the log. Is that not correct?
That is correct, but when I make the entry throughout the 18 years in homicide, I put my name at the bottom of the entry in black and bold, so I don't see any of those entries.
Okay, so you didn't personally write on the log. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
But when it says Detective Gutierrez and Bucknell evaluated the crime scene, when it says Detectives Gutierrez and Bucknell evaluated the crime scene, where does that information come from?
The entries are typically written by the lead investigator, but the chronological log, is maintained in a server that all homicide detectives have access to. So if a detective from another squad were to receive some kind of investigative information, they can access that chronological log and make an entry.
I understand, but your name is mentioned several times in the chron log, is it not?
Yes, as expected, yes.
And it describes conduct that you conducted or engaged in on the date that the chron log listed. Is that right?
That's correct.
How does that information get into the chron log if you didn't write it?
It's probably written or entered by Detective Parshall.
Who was the lead detective?
Yes.
And is it normal procedure that you would tell Detective Parshall what you did of any import, and then it was his job to include it in the chron log?
It can go either way. I could have entered it, or he, acting as the lead investigator, could have entered it. There's no set rule.
Well, how would he know what you did, what to enter that you did?
Well, he was there with me.
Okay. So either he saw you or you told him. Is that correct?
Correct.
So there are entries, for instance, that you and Bucknell searched the residence for additional evidence. Was that correct?
Yes.
It says victim's stolen Porsche was placed in the stolen vehicle system and a broadcast was done regarding the incident? That's in there, correct?
That would be hearsay, sustained.
Okay. Says Gutierrez interviewed the house cleaner Delia Rivera, is that right?
Counsel, you're going to go through everything that has Gutierrez's name in it, then it is hearsay, sustained.
I'm just asking if he did it. I'm not asking what the contents are.
You can show it to him then and say, did he do it?
Okay. Showing you the entry here, if you could just look at it yourself with your name at the top and tell me if that accurately describes one of the things you did at the scene at the time that you were there.
Okay, I read it.
And does that accurately describe what you did, one of the things you did that night?
So yes, Detective Parcell interviewed her. I translated Spanish for him.
Okay. And then the results were documented in the Cron, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, anywhere in the Cron, can you look, does it say that you met with or had any contact with Monica Sementilli?
No, I don't see an entry.
Yet you testified that you had a walk through with her, walk through the house, is that correct?
Yes.
So whose job was it or role was it to document that in the Cron file?
It would have been Detective Parcell's.
And it was not in there, it's not in there, correct?
Correct.
And is there anything in there that indicates that you thought it was unusual that Mrs. Sementilli was not crying or anything about the way she acted emotionally or how she looked? Anything in there about that?
No.
Did you think that was important?
In hindsight, of course.
In hindsight, because the prosecution said they were going to ask you about that?
No, in hindsight, as the case progressed, I understand that
Well, we don't want to know what you understand. That would be hearsay, but it's some,
Objection. Didn't finish his answer.
when I learned throughout the course of the investigation in the following days that Ms. Sementilli was the focus of the investigation as being potentially involved.
so you learned in subsequent days that she was the focus of the investigation. Is that right?
Yes.
And can you tell us approximately when that was in relation to the day you were first at the scene?
A couple days.
A couple of days later, she was the focus.
Yes.
And when you learned that she was the focus, did you tell anyone that you had relevant information about how she acted or looked at the day you saw her, the morning after the murder?
No, the only conversation I had about her behavior was with Detective Parcell as we were leaving the scene.
All right. So you told him.
Yes.
And do you know if he documented it anywhere?
I don't know.
And a few days later, when you heard she was the focus of the investigation, did you document it anywhere in a police report?
No.
Have you seen it documented in any police report at all that was prepared during the years that this case has been pending and now before this trial? Have you seen it anywhere documented?
No, I wouldn't have access to that. My involvement in the investigation was the crime scene, the interview with Ms. Rivera, and that's...
Did you tell anyone other than Detective Parshall about your observation?
Yes.
Who?
Ms. Silverman.
And when was the first time you told Ms. Silverman?
During a pre-trial meeting with her, some kind of prep. I can't remember, over a year ago, I believe.
So about a year ago?
Maybe longer.
2 years ago?
I don't recall, sir.
Well, you know this case has been pending 7 years.
I am aware of that, yes.
So it was several years after you would first at the scene that you first met with Ms. Silverman. Is that right?
Yes.
And how did that come up? How Monica Sementilli reacted the morning after the murder?
It was during a meeting with Ms. Silverman that discussed, what my involvement in the crime scene was.
And how did the no tears come up?
I brought it up.
You brought it up?
Yes.
Okay, was if it was documented anywhere?
Probably by Ms. Silverman, but I don't know for sure.
Have you been shown any documentation to refresh your memory?
No.
Is this the first time you've testified about this in court on this case?
I believe so, yes.
You didn't testify before the grand jury?
I don't remember, sir, actually.
Okay. And by the way, you don't know how she was acting emotionally the night before or the night of the murder, do you?
No, I don't.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Anything further about the people?
Yes, just briefly. Detective, so when you, back in January, you went to the scene, your role was to do this walkthrough with one of the detectives, right?
Correct.
And you weren't a lead detective on it, it wasn't your case, is that right?
That's correct.
And so, but after having investigated well over 100 homicides and being experienced, this one struck you as different, is what you're testifying to, because of the lack of what you deem no emotion, no tears, right?
Yes,
Okay, 7, 8 years later now, we're in court. Do you still remember that?
I do.
And does that stick out as different, even from that day forward, of the continuing investigations you've done of an unusual reaction from a victim?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further about the defense?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Detective Gutierrez. You're excused.
And people call Detective Carlos Camacho.
I'm just shocked that we're moving right along with this trial today. After what just happened with Zachary Hughes' trial and not starting for over 2.5 hours just to go onto a break, this is great.
Face me and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state the testimony you may give the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat and will you stand? And for the record, say spell your first and last name, please.
Carlos Camacho, CarlosCamacho.
Thank you. Detective, what is your occupation?
I am a detective with the Los Angeles Police Department working Robbery Homicide Division.
And how long have you been a detective?
Detective, let's see, more than 10 years.
Okay, and then how long have you been a peace officer?
28 years.
Okay. Back in January 2017, were you, or did you have a role in the arrest of Monica Sementilli and Robert Baker?
Yes.
Do you see Monica Sementilli in court?
Yes.
Could you please identify where she's sitting and what she's wearing?
Blue coat. She's sitting at a defense table.
Indicating the defendant.
I'm going to ask you about that specifically that day. Were you involved or were you there for the stop of a black Mustang that was being driven by Robert Baker?
Yes.
And that was on June 14th of 2017?
Correct.
And what was your role?
It was to collect evidence from the vehicle.
Do you recall where that stop was done?
It was on Archwood and Winnetka.
Okay, and that's in the San Fernando Valley?
Yes.
It's been previously marked as Exhibit 64 on the screen. Is that the Mustang that was stopped?
Yes, it is.
And inside that was, the driver was Robert Baker, passenger, front seat was Monica Sementilli?
Correct.
Okay, did you recover items from that
Yes, I did.
Mustang? And was that your primary responsibility to recover or search the car?
Yes, it was.
Okay, can you tell us what you did?
My partner and I both searched the vehicle. We found cell phones, credit cards, a knife, and a memory card.
Okay, and those items that were subsequently booked into evidence under the DO number associated with this case?
Yes.
Okay. If I may mark as People's, is it 147?
Yes, it is.
Okay, 147. It's 2 photographs depicting the black Mustang, side views of it.
All right.
Just for evidence purposes, is that the black Mustang on the street where it was stopped?
Yes, it is.
All right. Let's start with the cell phones. Did you recover cell phones belonging to the defendant?
At the time, I just collected cell phones that were in the vehicles.
Okay. If I may mark this People's 148, a photograph, 2 photographs side by side, one indicating a purse being held open, and the second photograph showing 2 cell phones.
Very good.
148 then, can you describe what this is and what you collected?
Yes, these are the 2 cell phones that were inside of this purse pouch thing here. They were collected from the passenger side seat, and we recovered those 2 phones.
And then the photo on the right is the 2 phones inside?
Yes.
I may mark is 149 then. A photo of an iPhone 7 recovered from the purse in the Mustang.
All right.
Is that one of the phones in a close-up photo of the phone?
Yes, it is.
And then as far as packaging, can you just go through how you package evidence and book it?
Yes, it's put into an envelope. You put the date and time, the item that was recovered, and you put it in an envelope and you seal it, and then you book it into evidence.
Okay. And again, the purse was in the passenger seat and the phone was inside the purse?
Yes.
Okay. And then Marcus Peoples 150. It's a 3 photographs entitled Sementilli's ZTE flip phone. Is that the other phone that was inside the purse?
Yes,
And again, was that packaged in the envelope and booked into evidence under the case DR number?
it was.
Did you recover other phones?
One other phone was recovered in my presence.
And where was that recovered from?
That was on the driver's side seat.
Your Honor, Marcus 151, 3 photographs of a phone entitled Baker's Samsung S8.
Yes.
151, People's 151, is that the phone recovered in your presence on the driver's side, or was it from somebody?
It was recovered from the driver's seat.
Okay, is that where Baker was sitting?
Yes.
And just for reference, People's 151 is item 121. People's 150 was item 120, and People's 149 is item 119. What does that mean when we have an item number?
Every item that is, or every item that's recovered as evidence is given a number, and it's just in order of when it was found. So you start from 1 all the way to whatever items you find.
And then, if I may mark, again, it's People's 152, 2 photographs of credit cards with a property report. This is listed as items 122 and 123. What is this?
Yes, those are the 2 credit cards that were found in the same purse.
Okay, the credit cards in the purse that have the name Monica Sementilli on both of those credit cards?
Correct.
And I mean, mark this People's 153. It's item 125 entitled Sementilli's SD card. It's 3 photographs of an SD card. Same thing here?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's an SD card that was recovered.
Where was that recovered from?
You know what? I don't remember exactly where that was recovered.
Give me 1 second, Tom.
Okay.
I still can't get over the fact that they use an SD card. Baker put
Items
everything
could not have been marked as one exhibit with sub-numbers.
on it.
A little late now, but
Okay.
maybe for the future.
Okay. 1 second. Let me get your copy of this here.
I have a copy of my report.
You do?
Yes,
Would looking at your report refresh your memory?
it would. It doesn't say where it was recovered from, but it was inside of the vehicle.
It was inside the vehicle.
Yes.
And then if I meant Marcus Peoples 154, 2 photographs entitled Sementilli's Mustang Interior. Can you describe what was recovered from here?
Yes, it's a black and white folding knife that was recovered from the center console.
And that's inside the Mustang?
Yes.
And lastly, 155, can I mark? Three photographs of a knife, a folding knife. One photo is extended to its folded.
Very well.
And was that the knife that was recovered from the console?
Yes, it was.
And that's inside the Mustang?
Yes, it was.
Okay, no more questions.
That's my part. Thank you, Your Honor. Marshal, were you aware that a knife was one of the suspected weapons in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And therefore, what did you do with that knife?
I booked it into evidence.
And do you know what happened to it after that?
No.
Do you know if it was compared with the autopsy report or any other evidence to determine if, in fact, it was or could be the murder weapon in this case?
No, sir. My job was only to collect evidence. I was not the investigating officer.
And who was the investigating officer?
I believe it was Detective Tellis and Gable.
And do you know whether they at some point reached a conclusion as to whether or not this was or was not or could have been the murder weapon?
I do not know.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Camacho, you're excused.
Thank you.
Go to your next witness.
People call Officer Curtis Davis.
You can face me and raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly state the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat in the witness stand.
Thank you.
Adjust the microphone so we can hear you. And for the record, say and spell your first and last name, please.
Sure. My name is Officer Curtis Davis, Curtis Davis.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, can you tell us how it is that you're employed, please?
I'm a police officer with the City of Los Angeles.
Okay, and how many years have you been so employed?
A little over 22.
And where are you assigned?
Currently assigned to Robbery Homicide's Investigative Support Section, and I have collateral duties as an FBI Task Force officer.
And what are your collateral duties relating to the FBI task force?
I perform the same service for the FBI that I do for Robbery Homicide, which is cyber-related investigations.
Okay, and what are cyber-related investigations? What does that mean for, like, plain speak?
Sure. Basically, it's digital investigations, and I focus on what I call the 3 C's of cyber: computers, cryptography, probably better known as encryption, and communication.
Okay. And how many years have you held that position?
Nearly 2 decades working in that particular field.
And as an investigative support officer assigned to Robbery Homicide Division, what is it that your job entails?
So the best comparison I like to use is digital archaeology. And I use that because when I was a young man, I actually wanted to be an archaeologist. I worked one summer out on a dig, and I was given a small gardening tool called a trowel, sifting through the dirt over the summertime, looking for artifacts. And we ended up with a 10-foot ditch with a lot of artifacts. 30 years later, I now sit at a computer with a mountain of data, and I'm essentially doing the same sort of work. I'm looking for what we call in the forensic community digital artifacts, indicators of some sort of human activity, device activity, account activity for all the different technologies that we've come to use in the modern world.
Okay. And how many years have you been assigned to RHD in that capacity?
Just shy of 9 years.
Okay. And is there an area that you consider to be your area of expertise within this area of digital archaeology?
Yes.
What is that?
I am a subject matter expert particularly on what's known as open source information, which includes social media. It is information that any member of the public can access, typically on the internet.
And in that capacity, do you often assist the investigating officers at Robbery Homicide Division with either technical aspects or cyber investigations relating to their cases?
Yes, exactly. I provide advice. I sometimes learn about new technologies as they emerge. And as you can imagine, most investigations nowadays have some sort of digital nexus.
Okay. And are you also often tapped in order to process information or verify or analyze digital evidence on various homicide cases or business records?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your education and training in this area, if you would.
Sure.
Other than the digging with the trowel.
Right. Well, I have a degree in intelligence management from Henley Putnam University with a cyber emphasis, and I'm a graduate of the University of Southern California's basic and intermediate cyber schools for law enforcement. In addition to that, I have over 200 hours of training from various specialty organizations, including the Joint Regional Intelligence Center, BK Forensics, Search.org, and so on, including sometimes the service providers themselves who've provided training. So, for example, training from Apple on their services.
Okay. Specifically for law enforcement?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And in terms of your degree in intelligence management, did that include items such as, let's say, cell phones, computer hardware, counterintelligence, computer drives, internet?
Yes, the full spectrum of modern technology, from computers to mobile devices, information that's readily available on the internet, information we can seek via business records and search warrants and so forth.
And prior to your employment with the LAPD, did you also work in this field for a couple of years?
Yes, I actually did, and that became kind of the groundwork for my interest in this when I became a police officer. I worked as a freelance web and graphic designer in the late 1990s and early 2000s.
Okay. All right. With respect to the case regarding the murder of Fabio Sementilli and the defendant Monica Sementilli and Robert Baker, did you create an overall presentation with respect to all of the information, or at least a summary of the information that you reviewed in this case?
Yes, I did.
And Your Honor, that is a PowerPoint that I believe has been saved onto a, is it a flash or a CD? CD. May that CD be marked, please, as Peoples 156.
Yes.
Do you want me to mark everything related to his presentation under 156, or do you want me to start?
Right under 156.
Yeah, sure. In your PowerPoint on slide 4, it looks like you have under number 2 a heading that's called methodology. So can you give us an idea of the type of records that you reviewed in this case?
Sure. This is just a summary, essentially, of the work that I performed in this particular investigation. The records that I reviewed include forensic examinations of various cell phones, business records, and open source information or information available on the internet.
All right, let's move to, actually, before we even start with this, we were just hearing about from Detective Carlos Camacho the arrest that took place on June 14th of 2017. Were you part of the arrest team on that date?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So were you by yourself that day, or did you have a partner?
I had a partner,
And do you recall who that was?
Detective Carmen Fabian. I believe she has a different last name now, but I know her as Carmen Fabian.
Okay. And were you responsible for you and your partner initiating the traffic stop that day on a black Mustang belonging to the defendant?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And was the defendant inside of the black Mustang?
Yes,
And what seat was she in?
in the passenger seat.
All right. Do you see her here in court today?
Yes, I do.
And at that time, did you also come in contact with the driver of the vehicle?
Yes,
And who is that?
Mr. Robert Baker.
Okay. And approximately what time did you make that stop?
It was early afternoon, I'd say about 1 o'clock p.m. in the afternoon.
Okay. And were you responsible for placing the defendant along with Robert Baker under arrest?
Yes,
Did you advise them at that time of what they were being arrested for?
yes,
Did you tell them that they were being arrested for the murder of Fabio Sementilli?
correct.
And at some point in time, did you and your partner have them step out of the Mustang?
Yes,
And then what did you do with them, if anything?
I placed them in the black and white vehicle that we were using to conduct the traffic stop.
That was a black and white police vehicle?
Yes,
Okay. And where were they placed within the vehicle?
to the rear compartment.
Okay. The back seat?
Yes,
Together?
yes,
And was that a vehicle that also was equipped with a recording device?
yes, it was.
And subsequent to that time, were they transported separately to the closest LAPD station, which was Van Nuys?
Because Van Nuys has a jail, yes.
Okay. And were you responsible at that time for impounding the defendant's black Mustang?
I started the impound, yes.
Okay. back to that so we don't have to switch over on the screen, which has caused some issues. You want? Showing you Exhibit 14. Do you recognize this individual?
Yes, I do.
And this, Your Honor, is Exhibit 14 with a red number 2 in the bottom left corner. And do you recognize this as Robert Baker, who was in the driver's seat?
Yes.
And showing you Exhibit, what's been marked now as Exhibit 147, has a 2 in the bottom left corner. Is this the black Ford Mustang that they were driving?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. Let's move back over to PowerPoint and let's look at slide number 7 and tell us what you documented here with respect to account connections.
Sure. So this is an example of a business record. In this particular case, it includes basic subscriber information from AT&T pertaining to Monica Sementilli, and listed on this basic subscriber sheet is an email address, kalmati-mo@hotmail.com, and a phone number, 818-424-4213.
Okay. And it also appears to have a home address, correct?
Yes, it does.
So this would be the type of information that you are familiar with receiving from business records. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Sources of information. This is slide number 5 of your PowerPoint. Does this document the various types of information that you were concerned with in your portion of your investigation?
Yes, these are my sources.
Okay. So you were looking at the extractions once they were already done from cell phones, correct?
Correct.
And did you use some type of software in order to view the forensic information from the cell phones?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What was that?
It's a software called Cellbrite, and it's an industry standard best practice in the use of analyzing, extracting data from mobile devices.
Okay. That allows you to visualize the information in various different versions depending on how you filter it, correct?
Yes.
All right. So in this case, you looked at the defendant's iPhone 7 as well as an LG pad, correct?
Correct.
And Baker's Samsung's, he had an S4 and an S8, correct?
Yes.
And along the course of your investigation, you also uncovered some information relative to a Samsung S6, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. And in terms of business records, you either authored various search warrants or reviewed records that were obtained via search warrant from various companies.
That's right.
All right. Your Honor, I have a stipulation. Can I have this marked as, I guess it would be part of 156?
The stipulation can be marked separately as
Will be marked
157.
157?
Yes.
All right. Relating to business records, and I believe that these records will be contained on a flash drive. Would you like me to mark them also as 157?
You said
The flash?
Yes.
Okay.
No, 158.
All right. We'll make the flash 158.
Very good.
And if I could just read it into the record, Your Honor.
Please.
stipulation regarding communications, media company business records on flash drive. The records contained in the following exhibits were obtained either by search warrant or subpoena and are true, correct, and authentic business records of the companies from which they came. Exhibit number 158, a flash drive that contains records from Instagram LLC, what was at the time called Facebook Inc., Apple Inc., WhatsApp Inc., Viber Media, capital S dot small case A dot R dot L, Dropbox Inc., Google LLC, Microsoft Corporation, in parentheses, Hotmail. The parties agree that each of the preceding records contains a true and correct record of an act, condition, or event of the business, and that the business's respective custodian of records or other qualified individuals would testify as to its identity and mode of preparation. Further, that the records contained in each exhibit were made in the regular course of business at or near the time of the act, condition, or event, and that the sources of information and method and time of preparation were such as to indicate the records are trustworthy. Pursuant to Evidence Code Section 1271, counsel join?
Received.
Join. Also, Your Honor, at this time, what has been marked previously as People's Exhibit 25 relating to call detail records, telecommunications provider business records, relating to AT&T records for the defendant, Sprint records for Robert Baker, and AT&T records for Jessica Sementilli, Isabel Sementilli, and Fabio Sementilli are contained on the same flash drive, 158. All right, so let's take a look at All right, so we talked about some of the business records, and then you said in addition to the business records, you also looked at information that was in open source that would include social media, correct?
That's right.
Show us, or explain to us, please, if you would, what we see here in your slide number 8.
Sure. This is a link chart, and I create a link chart because I'm a visual guy. It helps me understand that when I, as the investigator looking at digital artifacts or digital evidence, these accounts, these services don't typically exist in a silo or a vacuum. They often corroborate one another. So this shows the linkages between, for example, in the middle, the iPhone 7, the phone number 818-424-4213, the connection to the social media account on Instagram, Monica_Sementilli, usage of WhatsApp and Viber, association with the service provider AT&T, the connection to the email address, the primary email address, kalmatimo@hotmail.com, and an IP address that belongs, at least at that time, January 2017, to the Sementilli residence, and that is 104.181.138.147.
Okay. So it gives us a way to visualize the information and how you might come across the same information in multiple different sources.
Exactly.
All right. Let's look at the next one, another link chart that you created here. What do we see here in slide 9?
This is a little bit more of a complex link chart, but same principle, same idea. Essentially, the center of this chart would be Mr. Robert Baker, and it shows connections to multiple devices, a Samsung S4 and an S8. And in particular, connections to multiple email addresses. And those email addresses include different domains, such as a website, domains like oeg1.com, rball1.com, and then a connection to Mr. Christopher Austin, and an instruction to download WhatsApp, which we'll look at shortly.
Okay. And that came through a Facebook message, correct, from
Yes.
business records that were received.
Yeah.
All right. Let's look at the next slide. Let's go to the next one. What do we see here in slide 11?
This is kind of my introduction to what are known as Google Location Services. And Google Location Services operate predominantly for folks who have Android smartphones. The user of an Android can choose to turn on these services, and when they do, those services will essentially track the phone as it's moving around in the world. And it does this using different types of technology, including cell sites, including Wi-Fi, and as you can imagine, in an urban environment, there are Wi-Fi signals all around us. And then out on the street, when there are no other signals available, GPS from the satellites that are in orbit around the Earth.
Okay. And what do we see here in slide 12 relative to Google records that you reviewed relating to Baker's OEG Inc. at google.com?
This is the basic subscriber information for OEG Inc. at gmail.com. It's similar to the subscriber information from AT&T that we saw in the previous slide. Almost all companies retain this as kind of a customer database. And in this particular basic subscriber information, it has a list of the Google services that are turned on. And one of those, in the right-hand side, that's my highlight, location history.
Okay. What do we see here then in slide 13?
Accompanying that basic subscriber data from Google is an Excel spreadsheet. That's what we see here. And this is the location data itself. Thousands and thousands of rows capturing the movements of different Google devices associated to OEG Inc. at gmail.com as those devices move around in the world.
Okay. And we'll see how that comes into play, I think, in your presentation in a couple minutes. So here in slide 14, again, this would be reviewing some of the records relating to Baker's Samsung S4 through the Celebrite software program, correct?
Yes.
And what is it that you've highlighted here?
So similar to the link chart, we're now getting into the details of how these accounts corroborate one another. And this is from Mr. Robert Baker's Samsung S4, indicates that that device was associated to that primary Gmail email, OEG Inc.
Okay. And in the next slide, slide 15.
This is also an artifact extracted from that Samsung S4 device that shows that the Wi-Fi access point Sementilli _ 5G EXT was stored in that Samsung S4.
Okay. And it gives us a particular date and time, correct?
Yes, it does.
And what's the date and time?
Date and time, June 28th, 2016, and that is 3:28 p.m. UTC.
What does that mean, UTC?
Sure. So UTC it stands for Coordinated Universal Time. I don't know why they switched the letters, but that's just how it is. Essentially, if we think about computing, people are using phones and computers all over the world. In order to have a common frame of reference, computers and various services that are associated with computing and mobile devices tend to use UTC time as kind of the central establishing point for a time zone. It's Zulu or Greenwich Mean Time also.
Okay. And so how does that time correlate with time here in California on June 28th?
So this would be, because of daylight savings time, it's either -7 hours or -8 hours. I always use a converter to verify. But just anecdotally looking at the June date, that is typically in the summertime, it would be -7.
Okay. So that would be what time here?
Let's see.
That would be about 8:28 in the morning?
Thank you, yes.
Okay. So that would mean that his Samsung S4 connects to the Sementilli Wi-Fi and it stores that information in the phone at that point in time going forward?
Yes, whenever we need to add a Wi-Fi, a new Wi-Fi, we have to put in the name and the password, and then the device stores it until we choose to perhaps delete it or keep it.
Okay. And what do we see here on slide 16 regarding the defendant's iPhone?
This is Mrs. Monica Sementilli's iPhone, and it also includes the same Wi-Fi name, the Sementilli _5G
Okay. And in the next slide, slide 17, we have again, it looks like a Google Earth photograph. What are we seeing here?
Yes. So I took Google Earth, which is now free and open source, and I took a slice of the thousands of rows of Google location data, and just to look to corroborate some information on that particular approximate date and time, June 28th, 2016, Mr. Robert Baker's Samsung S4 shows in the vicinity of the Sementilli residence.
Okay. So he could be in the residence, he could be in front of the residence, but we're talking about within meters of the residence.
Correct.
Okay. So it has to be within range of the home router, correct?
Yes, whatever distance that particular router sends its signal out, sometimes it can go half a block or so.
And you've been in that home before when a search warrant was served for the router, correct?
Yes, I was.
Whoops. Looking now at slide 18, can you describe for us what we see here?
Sure. I took that same spreadsheet of Google location data and then I put it into some software that allows me to map it and actually animate it over time. And what this essentially shows is the Samsung S4 and any other related devices associated to Mr. Robert Baker and that oeginc@gmail.com in the vicinity of the Queen Victoria Road address between February 1st, 2016 and January 1st, 2017.
Okay. So during that time, we're basically seeing the blue dots represent the volume of times he's been to that location?
Correct. And it's, just to clarify, it's not every dot is a new trip. Those are the logged locations by Google, and so they can be in clusters.
Okay. And so at some point we see in the next slide, slide 19, clusters as well. So what does this particular slide show us?
Essentially the same data, but we're looking at it in a single still. And top down, it just shows the volume, all the different logged activity in and around that particular address.
Now, and is this also in between that same time period that we saw in the last slide that was February 1st of 2016 to January of 2017?
It's approximate, but this one goes a little bit further, January 1st to January 1st, 2016 to 2017.
Okay. And was there a particular gap in the data that you noted?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So in, I believe, January, late January, the Google location data essentially stops.
January of 2017?
2017, yes.
Okay.
So thousands and thousands of rows of data. Suddenly we have a very obvious gap between whatever date it was in January and June.
Again, June of 2017?
Yes.
Would that be consistent with Baker using maybe another device that doesn't have location history turned on the device?
Yes.
Permissions
So
like we talked about with respect to one of the previous slides that you described?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then did you note that that activity resumed in early June of 2017?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And is that what you, looking at the next slide, slide 20, is this a visual depiction of that gap that you talked about?
Yes.
Okay. Looking at slide, I think this is slide 21. Can you describe for us what we see here?
Sure. I just remapped the location data once it resumed again in the vicinity of the residence back in June 2017.
Okay. So that would be dated June 1st to July 1st of 2017?
Yes, ma'am.
Noting, of course, that they were arrested, the defendant and Baker were arrested on June 14th of 2017.
Yes.
Okay. Looking at slide 22, as you were talking about open source information and various connections, what do we see here?
This is also basic subscriber information, and this particular record comes from Facebook, now known as Meta. At the top of a Facebook record, it shows the subscriber, in this case the name first and last is listed as Robert Baker. There are several email addresses. One of them in particular is management@oeg1.com.
Okay. And looking at the following slide, slide 23. This is a Facebook conversation now that takes place between Baker and an individual by the name of, last name of Spence.
Yes.
And there's some conversation here about the defendant taking place.
Yes.
And what's the date that we're looking at here?
November 3rd, 2016.
Okay. Looking at slide 24, this is the Facebook messaging going back and forth between Baker and Michael Spence. Yes?
Yes.
And if we look at, I think this is slide 25, is this a continuation
Yes, it is.
of the same conversation?
Yes.
Okay. Talking about meeting up at some point in the future?
Yes.
Okay. And if we look at slide 26 here, again, conversation between Baker talking about being in a relationship with the defendant for a year now, correct?
Correct.
And slide 27, again, a continuation of this conversation.
Yes.
And at the end, actually, this is a new conversation. This is now a conversation between Baker and an individual by the name of Ron Ray.
Correct.
And what's the date of this conversation?
November 12th, 2016.
Okay. And that conversation, it looks like, started on the previous slide, which was slide 26. Correct?
Yes.
Again, talking about his relationship with the defendant.
Correct.
And on, let's see, slide 27, it looks like Ron Ray is asking for a picture.
Yes.
And then Baker sends Ron Ray a picture. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's, again, part of this Facebook messaging conversation that takes place on November 12th of 2016.
Yes.
Okay. And Baker says they're not living together yet, but it's coming soon.
Correct.
Okay. And then here in slide 30, what did we see? You blacked something out per court order.
It's a photograph of Mrs. Monica Sementilli.
Okay. And was it a photo where she was, let's say, part of her body might have been visible?
Yes.
And again, in this slide, slide 31, a picture of the defendant with Baker that he sends to Ron Ray.
Yes.
Okay. And does the conversation appear to continue here in slide 32?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Talking about their relationship and how happy they are.
Yes.
Okay. And here in slide 33, does this continue on the conversation between Baker and Ron Ray?
Yes.
Ray talking about his relationship with his wife, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay. And in the next slide, slide 34, a photograph that Ron Ray sends of himself with his wife.
Correct.
Okay. And at the very top, Baker sends a message saying that he and the defendant are planning on going on a vacation to Vegas soon.
Yes.
And that they're going to hang out with Ron Ray and his wife.
Correct.
Is this the same date that we talked about before, November 12th of 2016?
Yes, ma'am. November 12th.
Okay. And looking at slide 35, again, part of the conversation talking about Robert Baker talking about the defendant.
Yes.
Same thing in slide 36, a continuation of the same conversation.
Yes.
Okay. And also in slide 37,
Correct.
asking if she knows about Baker's background.
Yes.
Okay. And in slide 38, is this a continuation
Yes, it is.
where he's talking about his background in the adult porn business?
That's correct.
Okay. And conversations again on slide 39 about where the defendant and Baker met at the gym.
Yes.
Continuing on slide 40, that she has a little money and that he's told the defendant about Tracy and his prior relationships.
Objection, Your Honor, counsel is just testifying and leading this point.
Still rule.
Is that what it says?
Yes.
Slide 41, what do we see here?
That's a continuation of the conversation between Mr. Baker and Mr. Ray.
Okay. And at some point, Mr. Ray says, we'll come out for a weekend.
Yes.
Okay. And so they're talking about getting together, and in slide 42, the conversation continuing from the same date, correct?
Yes, still November 12th.
Okay. And slide 43. Still a continuation of the same conversation?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Let's talk about encrypted apps. Show us or explain to us what you've described here again in sort of a link chart in slide 45 with respect to encrypted apps.
Sure. So many smartphone applications nowadays are incorporating the use of encryption. And essentially what that means is that the companies themselves are not even able to read the messages. There is no backdoor for the content of the communication. And the best way that I can explain what encryption is to give you the example of if I were to send a letter and we had an agreement. I'm going to send a letter to you, but here's the key, here's the code. Every letter that I write to you inside the envelope of the letter is going to be moved from A to C, B to D, and so forth, all the way down the alphabet. And you and I are the only ones that know that that is the key. On the outside of the envelope, anyone can read that. That's what the companies can read. I mail you the letter, you have the key, you take it, you decode it, and now you can read the letter. What computing has done is taken that same concept and just used way more complicated math to make it almost impossible. So we're no longer at the A to C, B to D. They're using algorithms to make these encrypted messages essentially foolproof.
So by the use of algorithms, it ensures only that the sender and the receiver, the two people on either side of these messages, can read it.
Yes.
Okay. Does that also include law enforcement?
Law enforcement cannot typically access the content of these messages either. There is an exception sometimes on smartphone forensic exams we can, depending on which device it is and what the permissions are set up on that particular device. But if we're talking about business records from the companies themselves, we can't access those messages.
So does that include if you were to look at the actual extraction of a cell phone, you would not still, even if you were able to extract data from a cell phone, if they were using, let's say, an encrypted app, you would not be able to unscramble the data to read it.
Sometimes we can. It varies.
Were you able to in this case?
In some cases.
Okay. Did the defendant and Robert Baker use encrypted apps?
Yes.
In 2017, was it as common as it is now? To that we see that people who travel internationally sometimes use that in order to avoid, let's say, like data fees.
Objection, no foundation.
It was not as common in 2017.
Was it common in 2017 that people who are involved in criminal activity would often use encrypted apps to communicate in order to prevent law enforcement from being able to read what they're messaging about?
Objection, speculation, no foundation.
Overruled as well.
So in my experience, which spans many varieties of cases, the criminal element are often very tech savvy and do adopt things like encryption early on to essentially try to evade or thwart law enforcement detection.
Let me interrupt you at this time.
Let's take our morning recess for 15 minutes. The admission applies. See you back here in 15 minutes.
So a few things with what we're talking about and hearing. I'm surprised that the state didn't try at all to bring into this whole conversation about them getting arrested. They didn't play the audio and video of the pair in the back seat of the police car when they were arrested. They played it at the beginning of this trial, but this would be the moment to replay it because they were back there whispering and definitely sounding afraid and talking like, oh no, did they find stuff out? And it was very incriminating. And so far, they're not playing it. So if they don't, I will at some point go through the first 3 or 4 days and I will find it and have you guys watch it. But it was very damning. I mean, just that alone was them acting like they were caught, and it was bad. So I'm surprised they didn't play that just now. Robert Baker has such a bad history in so many different areas. One of the people that we know that will be taking the stand is another female that he was having an affair with. But he also was a S offender to a minor. Just a low-level, horrible individual. And I am surprised that they have not brought this up in this trial, which makes me think that there's some sort of rules that they have to leave it out, because why wouldn't you bring that up? That right there is pretty, gets straight to the point of what type of person Robert Baker is. But they haven't, so maybe they can't. I don't know. They discussed that when they were arrested that there were 2 knives in the Mustang. One of them was a, what did they say? One of those flip knives, but they did not confirm if those 2 knives were the ones used on Fabio. So I don't know if they're going to circle back around at some point and say whether they were or not, but they didn't confirm that yet. And so I was saying in the chat too, there's at least 6 more people that I can count that I know that's going to be taking the stand. But yes, this is a very long trial. And day 1 of this trial, the entire day and then a half a day, so for a day and a half, was just the state's opening statements. I mean, it was so long. And I knew then and there that this was going to be a very long trial. There's just so many people involved, and all these people have to take the stand so you can piece together who knew what, when did this happen, all of it. So it's a lot. It hasn't helped that this trial has started late every day. They take long breaks. Although I will say they started on time today. That was a first. They would say that they're going on a quick 15-minute break and they wouldn't come back for over an hour. One of their lunches, that's always an hour, was almost 3 hours. So they've been pretty crazy with it, but not today. I hope that continues because it makes me angry. But today's going good. Don't want to jinx myself. But yeah, if they keep going like this, I still think that it will be the rest of this week and probably the rest of next week. But who knows? It could even be after that. It really is going to be how long each of these major people coming to take the stand, how long they'll be on the stand. I think Robert Baker will be on the stand for quite a while. He supposedly is going to say that Monica was not involved with the killing, didn't know that he was going to do that. But Chris, who helped Robert, said, no, it was her idea. This was their plan. They even had a whole plan that they were going to move to Mexico and they were going to pay to fly Chris out there and live there as well once they got the insurance money. It's just unbelievable. So it'll be interesting to see if Robert tries to maintain that or not, if he'll flip on Monica, because he's in there for life. They both were given life sentences. So we will see. It will be interesting. I was saying also in the chat that Monica has not cried tears in this entire trial. And ever since the one police officer pointed it out the day that he went to her house and this happened, that she looked like she was crying. She was, doubled over and making all these wheezing noises and wiping her face, not one tear. And that was probably day 2 or 3, but that's what's been happening in court. She looks like she is, but she's not. And I think the only time that she might actually cry is when her daughters take the stand. And they're both supposed to be taking it, which will be very interesting because they are steadfast that they don't think their mom did this or had anything to do with it. So much so that their stepbrother and their entire dad's side of the family, they don't with any of them. Their relationships with all of them have stopped because his family thinks that she did it, and they don't believe that. So I hope no matter what the outcome is for this, I hope their relationships can somehow be mended. It's not a good situation. And even if she was found guilty and she goes to prison for the rest of her life, those kids are going to need support. And hopefully, even so the adults don't like that they're supporting their mom, hopefully the adults can look past that and still just be loving and try to rebuild something for them, because they're not going to have anybody if that's what happens. So yeah, I do think that would be the only time Monica will cry. That's my guess. I will be watching like a hawk. All right, I'm going to go get a little bit more coffee. I am not leaving. I'm going to make myself smaller though, back to the corner. And I probably won't do it today. Look for the audio and video of them in the police car talking. It's a lot to have to go through because these have been like very long days. But at some point, I will. Just not right now. All right, I'll be right back. I'm going to go get coffee and I'm going to mute myself. I think I forgot to say for this live, but I set up my live earlier. I am sick right now, so I'm utilizing my mute as much as possible so I'm not coughing or sneezing into the microphone. When they go on their lunch break, that's when I'm going to go to the Zachary Hughes trial. He is supposed to be taking the stand today. His attorney said, yes, Zachary did kill Christina Parcel, but for a just cause. So I want to watch it. I'm very invested into that one. So yeah, whenever this goes to lunch, I'm going to make a live for that and hop over there, and then I'll come back for this one. Thank you. I would like to feel better soon. It's been like 4 days of this. Too much. I'm looking right now to try to find the clip of them in the backseat of the police car. Really hope I don't have to dig through all day of videos to find it that way. But I'll do it if I have to. But I'm hoping that I'll find something on Google. You're welcome. I enjoy these trials, and the two that we're watching today especially, I'm pretty invested in the Monica one. I mean, it's been 8 years. It's just crazy how long this one has taken to get here. And even for Robert Baker, I believe he was sentenced a year ago. So it's been so drawn out. Yeah, nobody has the clip I'm talking about, so I will have to take the time. Maybe I'll do that tonight. I was saying on the other live that I'm planning on watching the Gabby Petito docu-series that is coming out on Netflix. I think it is out now. But I'm going to watch that and take some notes because I saw that there were new things in it that the general public wasn't told before. So I thought it might be interesting. But while I do that, maybe that's what I'll try to find, the clip that I cannot find right now. And I guess one more thing, if you've been watching with me every day, you know how I feel about this already. But if you haven't, so when they were arrested, Monica said she had no idea that Robert was planning this and that he was going to do this. And she was appalled that the police didn't arrest him right away and let her carry on the relationship with him. Well, for almost a year in jail after that, she carried on a relationship with him. They were writing love letters to each other, they were calling each other. And so she knew at that point, if she really didn't know, she knew by the time she got to jail and still continued her relationship with him. So she just, I don't know, I feel like she tried to use that and that just doesn't work. Why would you carry a relationship on with him if he murdered your husband and you're devastated? Doesn't make sense. And I know that this is not going to happen, but it would be shocking if Robert Baker came to testify and switched everything he was going to say and said, oh yeah, Monica knew. Because up until now, they're saying that he's going to say she didn't know.
Sementilli, defendant is present, all counsel are present, jury and Altus is present. Officer Davis, you're still under oath.
They are on time. They're doing great today.
Okay. So when we broke, we were talking about the use of encrypted apps and how law enforcement, people outside of the sender and receiver generally can't read those messages if they're encrypted. What happens, let's say, if the encrypted app were to be deleted from the phone? Does that also tend to delete all the data associated with that encrypted app?
It can further complicate our ability to look at any data that might be left behind on the phone.
So if one were to delete an encrypted application, would it also tend to delete messaging from or associated to that particular application, that data?
Yes.
Is it also possible that although the application and therefore the messaging might be deleted, that you may still be able to find artifacts indicative of prior usage of an encrypted app?
Yes, that is the case.
Okay. So what types of encrypted apps, or which encrypted apps did you find evidence of in this particular case?
In this case, WhatsApp and something called Viber.
Viber.
Yes.
Okay. Looking at slide 46, tell us what we see here.
This is a screenshot from Viber and their website, And on April 19th, 2016, they have a company blog that announced, today we're excited to announce that our users will be able to securely communicate across all of their devices through end-to-end encryption.
And that was as of April of 2016.
Correct.
Okay. And so what does it mean to have end-to-end encryption? Is that, again, what we were talking about from the sender to the receiver?
Yes, essentially the service provider, the company that provides that app, has zero knowledge in terms of the content because they themselves do not have the capability to decrypt the content of the message.
Okay. So again, that would mean that as a law enforcement officer, you would not be able to read those communications.
Yes, ma'am.
And looking here at slide 47, tell us what we are seeing, what you found evidence of with respect to the defendant's iCloud account.
Yes, so this is an Apple iCloud account, which comes in the form of a spreadsheet for this particular file associated with Mrs. Monica Sementilli. There is a registration email there, kalmatimo@hotmail.com, and it shows the actual installation of the Viber app per Apple's records.
Installation as of what date?
Let's see, April 2016.
Okay. And this is through, as you were showing us those linkage charts at the beginning, through a different type of business record, through the actual business records for the defendant's Apple iCloud account.
That's right.
Okay. And is there also information on this particular slide, I think it's 47, yes, that gives you information with respect to the actual data or the usage? You're filtering, it looks like, from September of 2015 through April of 2017, correct?
I'm sorry, filter, not necessarily the right terminology. Can I describe the...
Yeah, and I'm just trying to get to the fact that, I'll let you describe it, but I noticed that you have an indication at the bottom that there's an IP address associated with this iCloud account.
Yes, that's correct.
So tell us what we're looking at here.
Sure. So in addition to the installation of Viber and several purchases that were made for services with Viber, it logged the IP address at the time of those transactions, which was 104.181.138.147. The IP address I know to be associated during a significant time period, circa 2016 to early 2017, with the Sementilli residence.
The same IP address that we looked at earlier with respect to some of the other documentation, including, I believe it was Baker's, one of his Samsungs, correct?
That's right.
Okay. And so this is also purchases within the application itself?
Yes. Viber has some sort of sticker or emoji function where people can purchase sticker packs, and that's what those transactions were.
Okay. Sticker packs for emojis, such as if you were to send somebody a message, you could include an emoji like a heart or some other type of emoji on your message. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, similar to other modern messaging applications where users are able to use small graphical icons that represent happiness, sadness, laughter, hearts, and so on.
Okay. Looking at slide 48, is this another record that corroborates what you saw with respect to the usage of Viber through business records associated with the defendant's AT&T account?
Yes, it is.
And what did you indicate here on this particular slide, slide 48?
So this particular business record is a long text file that includes the AT&T web history associated with the 818-424-4213 phone number, and it logs web access to particular content, and the ones I've highlighted here in red include Viber.com, which is the Viber service.
Okay. So that also corroborates, again, the usage of this application during a period of time through the defendant's AT&T web history, correct?
Yes.
And approximately how many entries did you find between the period of installation in April of 2016 through, let's say, January 17th that you've indicated at the bottom of 2017?
433 entries in this particular record.
So what does that mean when you have an entry?
These companies keep their records in different formats, and that's why they look different when I show the screenshots of them. In the case of AT&T, they typically do records at 5-minute intervals, and the 433 just happens to be the way AT&T keeps track of the individual services and websites that people go to at those 5-minute increments.
So if we're looking at 433 entries, is that just between the defendant and Robert Baker?
Don't know for sure. We would need a larger swath of data from Viber to corroborate that.
Okay. What do we see here in slide 49 that you've captured?
Sure, and I apologize for the small print. It was the only way I could fit it on one slide. This is also from the Apple iCloud records, and it shows essentially app updates from the Apple Store for Viber over a period of time from April 20th, 2016 to January 4th, 2017.
Okay. So we know that it had to have been in use because it was installed at least during that time period.
Correct.
Okay. And what do we see here on the Celebrite report in slide 50?
So now this is a log entry directly from the phone, the iPhone that was associated with Mrs. Monica Sementilli. And this is a specific artifact known as a log entry kept by the device, indicating that there was Viber on the particular device.
And that was on the date of the murder in this case, correct? January 23rd of 2017?
That is correct.
Okay. So this is part of the forensic phone extraction that you viewed, correct?
Yes, it is.
All right. What do we see here that you've captured in slide 51 with respect to the Viber business records for the defendant's phone number?
Now we have the Viber business records from Viber as a business entity themselves, directly from them.
Okay. And you've indicated on here that there's 5,752 messages to and from the defendant's phone number, correct?
That is correct.
And all of these messages are between, as I asked in the prior question, the defendant and Robert Baker's phone, correct?
Yes.
And that's just the month of January of 2017 alone?
Yes, ma'am.
The 5,752 messages between them?
Yes.
Does that also, once again, include the Sementilli Wi-Fi address?
Not that I can see here.
Let's look here at slide 52, I believe. What did you capture here?
Yeah, so this is part of the Viber records that they produced, and this is a Viber call history, so telephone calls that are essentially routed through the Viber service, and this includes a caller and recipient IP address as part of that particular log file. That does have that same Wi-Fi address, 104.181.138.147.
So in addition to being able to send messages through this encrypted application, you can also make phone calls through the application.
Yes.
Okay. So what is it that you've highlighted here?
These are all the instances where that particular IP address shows in the record.
Okay. The Sementilli home IP address.
Correct.
Okay. And again, these would be this would be part of the record of the phone calls between the defendant and Baker in January of 2017.
Yes.
What do we see here in slide 53 that you've captured?
This is some data extracted from Mrs. Sementilli's iPhone that also shows phone calls that match the business records that were obtained from Viber. They show that there was a Viber contact tied to Mr. Robert Baker's number and given kind of a username of Louisa, and that these calls were deleted.
And I've note that you noted at the very end there that Baker's middle name is Lewis.
Yes.
Okay. When you say that the Viber contact for Baker's phone number was deleted, what does that mean?
According to the forensic data in the phone, and that's the column I've highlighted on the right-hand side with the red box, the calls were deleted from, or attempted to be deleted from the phone.
Okay. But they still came through in the extraction. At least you could see remnants or artifacts from that, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So at some time prior to their arrest on June 14th of 2017, when this particular cell phone was seized, the defendant attempted to delete the contact for Baker.
I'm cautious about saying who deleted what because I'm not present for that, but there was data that was deleted.
Okay. What do we see here in slide 54?
So I created a chart in Excel just showing for that approximate month period of time in January 2017 the volume of communications traffic between the phone number associated to Robert Baker and the phone number associated with Mrs. Sementilli on the Viber app.
And that again is just for the activity during the month of January of 2017?
Correct.
Date of January 22nd of 2017. It is 4 pages in length. May it be marked as People's 159.
Yes.
Does this contain the Viber communications between the defendant and Baker just for the date of January 22nd of 2017?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have another timeline that is 4 pages in length again, and this is just for the date of January 23rd of 2017. May it be marked as People's 160.
It may.
Thank you. With respect to Exhibit 160, does this also document the communications from the defendant, including her communications to Baker on the day of the murder, January 23rd?
Yes.
All right. Looking at slide 56, can you describe, I'm sorry, this is slide 55, what you've captured here?
Yes, this is another screenshot showing some of the messaging that took place between the phone number associated to Mr. Baker and the phone number associated to Mrs. Sementilli via Viber on the afternoon of January 23rd, 2017.
Just the afternoon.
Yes.
And which hours is this between?
This is, let's see, 17, it's 5:48 to 8:14. This is essentially Eastern time, so we back it up 3 hours. So 2:48 to 5:14.
5:14.
Yes.
Looking at slide 56, Viber usage with respect to Baker's Samsung S4, what did you capture here?
This is another artifact. This one is from Mr. Baker's Samsung S4. It shows that Viber was in use on that device going all the way back to 2015.
Okay. And the following slide, slide 57, what is this?
This is a photograph recovered from the business records from Mr. Robert Baker's Dropbox account. And this particular image was recovered from that Dropbox account entitled viberimage.jpg.
So what does that mean?
Somebody, and I can't say who, named the file Viber image.
Okay. And this is, again, on Baker's Dropbox account.
Correct.
Contained within his Dropbox account.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. What do we see here in slide 58? Again, a linkage chart.
So as you know, I like these link charts. This is one for Viber in particular, and essentially it shows the use of Viber between the iPhone associated to Mrs. Sementilli and the Samsung S4 associated with Mr. Baker, and how those accounts, many of which we've just reviewed, all connect and overlap with each other.
Okay. The Samsung, in this case, the S4.
Yes.
Okay. And this is based on the various business records, such as what we see here, the AT&T business records or Dropbox business records, Viber records that we've been talking about.
Yes.
Okay. As well as, obviously, the data from the forensic extraction of their cell phones.
Correct.
All right. What do we see here in slide 59, which I believe you referenced at the beginning?
Yes, this was in one of my earlier link charts, and this is an artifact recovered from Mr. Baker's Samsung S4 in reference to a Facebook Messenger chat between himself and an account associated to Mr. Christopher Austin, and the content of that is download WhatsApp on your phone.
What is WhatsApp?
WhatsApp is one of the most popular chat applications in the world. It was purchased by Facebook, now known as Meta. It's used all over the world to facilitate instant messaging and phone calls. And it is end-to-end encrypted.
So once again, this is an application where you can message Or as we saw with Viber, you can make phone calls through the app.
Yes.
What's the purpose of that, making phone calls through the app?
It can vary. Sometimes, particularly with international audiences, it enables folks to keep in touch with each other without paying the astronomical fees from direct cellular phone calls.
Okay. So you said voice calls can be made. Can one also make video calls?
Yes.
We talked about sending messages,
Yes.
documents,
Yes.
videos.
Yes.
What do we see here in slide 60?
This is one of those basic subscriber information sheets. In this particular WhatsApp account is associated with Mr. Baker's 213-272-1093 phone number. And even though WhatsApp is encrypted, they do keep some data on their customers. And one of the things in this particular record is a list of all the contacts. And so underneath that top portion where it designates whose account it is, it's a list of all the phone numbers in the particular WhatsApp contacts, and that includes the 818 phone number associated with Mrs. Sementilli and a 907 phone number associated with Mr. Christopher Austin.
Okay. And what date is this that we're talking about?
Let's see, the date last changed June 13, 2017.
If I go back one slide to slide 59, this would have been on January 26th of 2017, 3 days after the murder, correct?
Yes.
The communication between Baker and Austin?
Correct.
Okay. Moving forward to slide 61, what is this?
This is another screenshot from that WhatsApp subscriber information. This one is associated with that 213-272 phone number affiliated with Mr. Baker. And it shows when the account was first created, when it was registered, and the first send, which is the first message, as well as underneath that a device name, and that's the sort of corporate name for a Samsung S6 device.
Okay. So this was a device that he had to have in his possession at the time this record was created on the day of the murder, correct? January 23rd.
Correct.
And the time, 23:40, does that have to be adjusted for UTC, or is that in fact 11:40 at night?
The WhatsApp records, unlike most of the other records we get, are actually in Pacific time.
Okay. So this is a record that was created at 11:40 the night of the murder.
Yes.
Okay. Relative to the phone number we know is associated with Robert Baker.
Yes.
Okay. Looking here at slide 62 with respect to the defendant's phone number, what do we see here?
Essentially, it's the same record as far as the type. This is a WhatsApp business record. This one is associated with that 818-424 phone number. And as before, it shows when the account was created, registered, and when the first message was sent.
Okay. So that would have been 4 days after the murder on January 27th.
Yes.
At somewhere around 8:34 in the morning?
Correct.
Here in slide 63.
This is an artifact recovered from the iPhone associated to Mrs. Sementilli, and it has a contact entry in the phone for the WhatsApp account affiliated with Mr. Baker's phone number. And there's a push name which is a display name of RB, and the number is listed as Louisa.
What is a display name or a push name? That's what comes up on your phone?
It's like a username.
Okay. And another linkage chart in slide 64. Explain what you have displayed here.
Sure, and it's similar to the Viber link chart. This is now one for WhatsApp, showing the connections and references across different devices and accounts, and the usage of WhatsApp to include the Samsung S8, the Samsung S6, which we know about from the WhatsApp records themselves, the iPhone 7 associated with Mrs. Sementilli, and the various phone numbers for all parties.
Okay. Looking at slide 65, Viber to WhatsApp timeline. What did you display here?
So in addition to showing kind of the linkages between these accounts, I like to see the context of these different accounts over time. And that's what I've done here, is essentially create a timeline for most of the data that we've already seen individually to put it in some sort of context. So starting at the top from the iCloud records, we have when Viber was first installed on the iPhone associated to Mrs. Sementilli. Then we've got Viber activity spread across the AT&T web history. We've got Viber app updates also taking place over time in the iCloud records. We've got ongoing Viber chats between the account associated to Mr. Baker and Mrs. Sementilli from the end of 2016 through most of January. That's the 5,000 plus messages.
5,700?
5,700, yes. We've got log entries from the S4, from the iPhone. We've got the WhatsApp records themselves for the creation of new WhatsApp accounts, the direction from Mr. Baker's Facebook Messenger account to the Austin Facebook Messenger account to download WhatsApp, and then the creation of a WhatsApp account on January 27th by the phone number associated with Mrs. Sementilli.
Okay. So from this, we can see that prior to the murder, the defendant and Baker were using Viber as their encrypted app for means of communication, and then after the murder, they switched to using WhatsApp as their encrypted app.
Yes.
And what do we see here in slide 66?
So this is a business record from Facebook, from Mr. Baker's associated Facebook account, and it shows the removal of certain friends from that account. And there are two of them associated to Mr. Christopher Austin. The first one, the user is Christopher Austin, and the removal of that account was on January 26th, 2017. And the second one is a second account for Mr. Austin, Chris Vocals, and that one was removed June 1st, 2017.
Okay. So the first one, he's removing Austin as basically a friend from his Facebook account.
Yes.
January 26th, and at 1:52 a.m. local time, correct?
That's right.
And the second being another Facebook account for the same individual, Christopher Austin, under the name Chris Vocals on the June 1st date.
Yes.
All right. Let's look at slide 68. What do we see here?
This is some articles of incorporation obtained via the California Secretary of State Business Search. These are freely available to the public and can be downloaded. And this pertains to a company established called Oz Entertainment Group Incorporated by the agent of record noted here in the lower right, individual Robert Baker. And that was back in August 2002.
Okay. Looking here at slide 69, what did you capture?
This is a historical web shot of the OzEntertainmentGroup.com website, which originally was launched in 2004 approximately, and this is the website as it appeared in June of 2016. And it has a contact page, which is common for websites, that lists the email address admin@oeg1.com.
So what does that mean? Because we've seen this OEG email address or website before. Is that a domain?
It is a domain.
So what does that mean?
It's a website. Essentially, and if we can all together kind of flash back to before the social media era, individuals were launching websites quite commonly. And that still does happen. But in order to register a website, you have to pay a company like GoDaddy and put in registration information. And the image here shows a screenshot of what purports to be Mr. Baker's website from about June 2016, which seems to be affiliated with the business that he set up in the early 2000s.
Okay. So once you have a web domain, can you have multiple different email addresses for or through that web domain?
Yes, that's very common.
Okay. So you could have like the Arball one that we've seen or the OEG1.com. All of those would be
Yes.
various email addresses that you would have through the same website, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And if you use, as you were mentioning, GoDaddy, would that be a way to forward emails from your web domain to your email account?
So when you register a website, in the portal where you log in to sort of manage your website, you can choose to establish new email accounts. You can also have those email accounts forward to other email accounts, depending on the services offered by the company hosting that website.
Okay. So if he registered that website, Mr. Baker, that would mean that he would have control over all of those functions.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Looking here at slide 70, what does this depict?
These are some messages from Mr. Baker's Facebook account where he references Arball, and as an investigator, it gave me the context for what Arball was. It's shorthand for racquetball.
Okay. And here's slide 71. This is the domain registration we were talking about?
Yes.
And this also is not only in the name of Robert Baker, but it also has the Oz Entertainment as the organization name.
That's right.
With an associated, it looks like a P.O. box and another phone number, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when did this Arball 1 registration occur?
May 11th, 2015.
Okay. Looking here at slide 72, what does this show us?
These are artifacts from Mr. Baker's Samsung S4, and it shows a web history and some of the websites that particular device visited. This would have been on May 11th, 2015, and it shows arball1.com as the website.
Okay. And looking here at slide 73, what does this depict?
More information that corroborates the registration and renewals of the rball1.com website. This is from the records from the oeginc@gmail.com Google account. And this particular record comes from the mail that was produced, the email that was produced for that particular account, showing GoDaddy renewal information for his various websites.
Okay. And what do we see here in slide 74?
This is also from Mr. Baker's associated Facebook account. It appears to be a typo, probably intended to be league, but it has an email address of, I'm going to say league for lack of a better phrase, league@rball1.com.
Looking at slide 75, is this the auto forwarding service that you were talking about?
Yes, this is just a screenshot from GoDaddy themselves showing that yes, in fact, you can set up auto forwarding through their service.
Okay. And what do we see here in slide 76? This is relative to Hotmail. So this is with respect to the defendant's Hotmail account, correct?
That's right. This would be that kalmati-mo@hotmail.com email account.
And what did you note here?
So the records themselves were voluminous, high volume, but they came in several file folders, and there was a folder entitled Recoverable Items /Deletions. So these were 4 emails that were deleted from that Hotmail account.
So of all of the emails contained within the mailbox, you found only 4 that had been deleted in the defendant's Hotmail account through the business records?
Yes, ma'am, only 4.
Is this through the business records or through the phone extraction?
This is, what we're seeing right here is from the Hotmail business records.
Okay. And were you able to determine what those 4 emails were?
Yes.
Okay. Let's look at slide 77. What did you depict here?
This just shows how voluminous the email was when I received it and started looking through it. So most folks nowadays get a lot of email spam. We have a large inbox of 12,760 messages. Sent messages were 1,682, but only 4 were deleted.
Okay. Looking here at slide 78, what does this show us?
This is also from the business records from Microsoft's Hotmail service, and this shows contacts, so email contacts in this particular case. And there was a highlighted entry here where I added the highlight that shows a log entry in that contact list for quick name Rob.
What's a quick name? Is that the same thing as what we were talking about earlier?
It's like a nickname or a username.
Okay.
So we have a username of Rob. We've got that 213-272-1093 phone number also listed there. And then the contact email is diane@rball1.com.
Okay. So that would be something that a user would, again, plug into their phone in order to decide how they wanted that particular individual to appear?
Yes.
Okay. And so out of the defendant's Hotmail account, this is how Rob Baker is identified in her phone or in her email.
In her email, yes.
Okay. Looking at slide 79, looking at iPhone contacts, what do we see here?
This now is an artifact from Mrs. Sementilli's iPhone, also showing the presence of the same diane@rball1.com email affiliated to a contact called Diane Racquetball in the phone.
Okay. And what did you note at the bottom with respect to this log entry with, regarding the defendant's forensic cell phone extraction?
There were also 2 other email addresses in there for arball1.com. One was Lee at arball1.com, and the other was Rob at arball1.
Okay, and that league at Arball1, I think a few slides ago, I'm going back to, I think this is slide 74, where you talked about there being a typo. This is the same league at Arball1 that we saw that was registered to Baker.
Yes.
Okay. All right, looking here at slide 80, with respect to those 4 deleted emails out of the thousands in the defendant's email account, what did you learn?
So this particular slide has screenshots of 3 of the 4 email addresses. And these emails sent from the kalmadimo@hotmail.com to this Diane at Arball1 email address pertained to the travel and itinerary of a Mr. Fabio Sementilli.
So she sent an email to Robert Baker at this email account regarding her husband's travel itineraries.
Yes,
Okay. And then deleted it after she sent it.
correct.
Okay. You said that was 3 of them.
That was 3 of the 4 here.
Okay. And what do we see here that you've depicted in slide 81?
This is just a larger screenshot of one of the attachments in one of those 4 emails that shows one of the agenda items for some travels for Mr. Sementilli.
On the left, under where it says Wella?
Yes, on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, just to do a comparison, during the same time period, the Instagram account, Monica_Sementilli, was making posts that were tagged to the Woodland Hills area, seemed to indicate the extreme heat at that time.
Okay. So at the same time that she's sending travel itineraries to Robert Baker, she is posting on her Instagram account.
In approximately the same time range.
In June of 2016.
Yes.
Early June of 2016. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. What do we see here in slide 82?
So this is the 4th of the 4 deleted emails from kalmadimo@hotmail.com. And this particular email is a forward from a company called First Digital Surveillance to Diane at arball1.com.
So does it indicate what date this was sent?
Yes.
And what date was that?
June 28th, 2016.
So on June 28th of 2016, the defendant forwards the what's referred to in the subject line, First Digital Surveillance DVR System Operation and User Manual, to Robert Baker.
The Hotmail account forwards exactly that.
And after she forwards that information, she then deletes it, the forwarded email, from her account.
The email then shows up in the deleted folder.
So that's the 4th out of the 4 deleted emails that you indicated you were able to, that you found in going through her email account.
Yes.
And what do we see depicted here in slide 83?
This is still part of that same email from First Digital Surveillance, the company. It's a long email, and the email includes instructions, specific instructions for how to log in to the home closed circuit television system First Digital set up at the Sementilli residence. This particular slide shows that in order to log in, you have to input that specific IP address of 104.181.138.147.
The same IP address that we've seen now in multiple slides, including the one where Robert Baker, on this particular date, June 28th of 2016, saved the Sementilli IP address.
Yes.
And were you able to actually verify that that IP address was still valid?
Yes.
And how did you do that?
There was an Instagram post that was made in late January, and
By who?
By the account associated with Mrs. Sementilli, Monica _Sementilli.
Okay.
And the post shows Mr. Sementilli's chair, favorite chair, I think. And there's an IP address that's logged in the record that shows it's the same IP address at the house.
That was a photograph that was posted 2 days after her husband was murdered. To be able to remotely access the Sementilli CCTV or home surveillance system, that individual would need the information that we see here on this particular slide.
Correct.
And what did you indicate here in slide 84? Is this a continuation of that same deleted email that the defendant got from First Digital and forwarded to Baker and then deleted?
Yes.
And what does this indicate?
This is further down in that long email, and it shows some additional login information specifically for using the app called IDMSS Lite, which is for iPhone, in order to view one's closed circuit television system the way First Digital has set it up.
Okay. And so this would have been an email that would have been deleted from the sent folder, correct?
Correct.
What do we see here that you've depicted in slide 85?
Just to get an understanding of what the app looks like, on the left-hand side is what the IDMSS app appears to be on Apple's store. And then there's also a Google Android version called GDMSS in their Android Play Store.
Okay. So if you're using an Apple iPhone, the IDMSS Lite would be the application you would use. However, if you're using an Android, like a Samsung, this would be the application one would use.
That's right.
Okay. And what did you show here in slide 86 relevant to the deleted email regarding access to the Sementilli home surveillance system?
So this is another record from Apple, and this particular record shows that the app, the IDMSS Lite app, was installed on the account associated with Mrs. Sementilli, and that it was installed on June 28th, 2016.
So she has that installed, and you were able to determine that from the actual business records from iCloud?
Yes.
And iCloud is an Apple product, correct?
Yes.
And if you have an iPhone, your iPhone, you can set your iPhone so that it will back up automatically to your iCloud?
You can choose what you want to sort of sync with Apple's servers. So they provide a service called iCloud, and they also keep meticulous records on their customers, including which apps are installed, which apps are purchased. And this particular app, the IDMSS Lite app, was installed in relation to her account.
And that was something that you were able to view from reviewing the business records subpoenaed from Apple.
Yes.
Okay. Showing you slide 87. What did you depict here?
So this is an artifact from Mr. Baker's Samsung, and this shows that the email diane@arball1.com was automatically forwarded to eventually to his oeginc@gmail.com email address.
Okay. What do we see here in slide 88 with this linkage chart?
This essentially shows the route of travel for that particular First Digital surveillance email. So we have the kalmadimo@hotmail.com in the lower left. We know that's associated with Mrs. Sementilli. Forwarded the First Digital surveillance email. It then lands at the diane@arball1.com email address, and then is automatically forwarded to the rob@oeg1.com email address, and finally lands in the oeginc@gmail.com account associated with Mr. Baker.
Okay. And when you mentioned his Samsung, this would have been the Samsung S4?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you actually confirm that the Sementilli CCTV or DVR instructions were actually found in Baker's inbox?
Yes.
From looking at his forensic extraction?
Yes, I did.
Okay. By the way, did you also have the opportunity to look at Fabio Sementilli, the victim in this case, the forensic extraction from his cell phone, which was also an Apple iPhone, number 67?
Yes, I did.
And did he have that installed on his cell phone?
He did not have the IDMSS Lite app.
Okay. And given that we know that we never recovered a Samsung S6 that you showed registered to Baker, you have no idea whether or not that application might have been on that cell phone that was never recovered, correct? You can't tell that from the records.
Objection. Facts and evidence regarding the owner of that Samsung S6.
It's overruled.
That's correct.
Okay. Tell us what we see here in slide 89.
Yes, so this is that Instagram post I had spoken about a few moments ago from the Monica Sementilli Instagram account, and it shows the favorite chair of Mr. Sementilli with some cigar memorabilia, a baseball hat on top of it. And this post was made January 25th, 2017 at 10:31 local time, and it includes the IP address that was logged as part of Instagram's records.
This is showing us again 2 days after the murder, and that time 10:31, would that be AM?
Yes.
Okay. By the way, did you have an opportunity to review the victim's cell phone extraction for any potential conference calls on the date of installation, June 28th of 2016, of the CCTV with anybody from First Digital?
Yes, I did.
And were you able to find any indication that his phone was utilized for a conference call with anybody from First Digital on the date of installation, June 28th of 2016?
I was not.
Looking at the next slide here, which I believe is 90. Yes. What did you depict here?
So this is a single still of a video that will subsequently play, taken from the Target store. And this is on January 23rd, 2017. It depicts Mrs. Sementilli in the lower left-hand corner interacting with her smartphone.
Okay. That's her in the sweatshirt that we see in the background, the gray sweatshirt, black leggings, white pennies.
Yes, ma'am. Currently at the middle top of the screen.
And this is video footage that you got from robbery homicide detectives relating to the defendant's actions on the day of the murder, January 23rd of 2017 at 4:32 p.m.
That's right.
From the local Target store?
Yes.
What was the relevance of what we just saw?
As a digital investigator, attribution is very important. It's one of the reasons I do so much work to corroborate across all these different accounts. And in this particular video, Mrs. Sementilli is interacting with her phone, which to me as the investigator shows that she has full control of that device at that particular time.
Okay. Let's look at the next slide. I believe this is slide 92. What does this indicate?
This is an artifact from Mrs. Sementilli's iPhone, and it shows the presence of a log entry for the IDMSS Lite app with the most recent log entry on January 23rd, 2017.
At a particular time?
11:53 UTC.
And the 11:53, once it's converted, is that 3:53 in the afternoon?
3:53 in the afternoon, yes.
Okay. And does this indicate access through the home IP address?
No, I don't see the IP address on this particular file.
Okay. In terms of this particular artifact from the Celebrate extraction on her phone, were you able to gather any information from the data that is displayed here?
Sure. So in addition to the date and the timestamp that shows the most recent usage per the log of that particular app, it also shows the approximate amount of data that was coming in and going out of the phone, and that's shown in the center column where it says Wi-Fi in, Wi-Fi out, and then WAN in and WAN out. WAN stands for Wide Area Network. If this device was at home and connected to Wi-Fi, we would see data associated with the Wi-Fi, but because it's out in public, it's essentially using the data towers, the cell phone towers, to receive internet traffic. So here we have WAN in bytes, and it's a fairly large number. Put my commas in. 32,092,462.
What's a byte?
A byte is a small unit of data. When we're talking about data actually being transmitted, it's bits. But it's similar, if you remember, for a long time we operated in the world of kilobytes, and then we went to megabytes and gigabytes, and now we're in a world of terabytes. So this is the smallest unit of measurement, which is bits of data being transmitted.
So since she's not at home, and as we saw in the video, she's connecting or using her phone, what does this indicate about that usage?
She's out and about in public. She's away far enough from the residence or other known Wi-Fi access points so that she's essentially getting whatever traffic is associated with the IDMSS Lite app is coming down from the local data tower, in this particular case AT&T.
So it's being downloaded, the data to her phone?
Yes, I like to use the analogy, what goes up must come down when it comes to the internet, as far as things that are uploaded can then be downloaded. She's the recipient on the receiving end of that, and so that's why it shows in instead of out.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
The one in versus one out?
Right.
Okay. So the records show the distinction?
Yes.
Okay. And with respect to the high data amount that you talked about, the 32 million, what is that consistent with?
So that's consistent with essentially streaming video. Video is a high bandwidth activity. If we think about watching movies on any of these services common nowadays like Netflix, it's a lot more data coming down as it's being downloaded than, say, a text message or just a simple photograph. Streaming video, even in 2017, is still a fairly sizable amount of data, a chunk.
Okay. Let's look at what we see in the AT&T records in slide 93 with respect to the data. What does this tell us?
So now we have AT&T internet records associated with that 818-424-4213 phone number, which is associated to Mrs. Sementilli. And this corroborates some of the data traffic found in that artifact off of the phone. Additionally, it shows that the IP address associated with the Sementilli residence was being accessed multiple times on January 23rd, local time, between a span of about 4 o'clock in the afternoon and 5:15 p.m.
So this would be a separate type of record that you're looking at for data, correct? That corroborates what we just saw with respect to the IDMS light application data from her Celebrite, her forensic phone extraction.
Yes, so the previous slide was essentially the device, the phone itself. This particular record is pertaining to the tower, the AT&T data itself.
So would this be consistent with when you said streaming video from her surveillance, her live surveillance feed from her CCTV cameras?
Yes, especially early on it shows a spike, if you will, in data coming in via AT&T.
Why is that important?
It's consistent with the streaming of video.
Okay. Let me switch over for a moment. A one-page document that has AT&T record regarding the defendant's cell phone 818-424-4213. May it be marked as People's 161.
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe that this record, along with other AT&T records, are contained on a DVD, which we've marked as Exhibit 156.
All right.
Showing you Exhibit 161. Can you describe for us what we're looking at here?
Just shown. This includes all of the logged activity in that AT&T data record for that home IP address of 104.181.138.147. And there are a total of 10 entries between 4 o'clock in the afternoon and 5:15.
10 entries to the home IP address?
Yes.
Did I have you explain this? The AT&T mobility records, this also shows, this corroborates what we just looked at, correct?
Yes, so AT&T, very meticulous in their record keeping, has another set of records that shows all the data coming in to that particular device. Doesn't show IP addresses like the other record did, but this one does show bytes down, and consistent with the other information we've just seen, it shows, again, a surge in downloaded activity coming into that device.
What is that surge consistent with? The same thing we've been talking about, accessing the CCTV cameras through your home IP address onto your phone while you're remote outside of your home?
Yes.
Okay. Looking at slide 95, another linkage chart, what do we see here?
This is my visual representation of everything I just talked about to hopefully help it make sense. In the bottom left-hand corner, we've got the app where the user would open up and log in and view the actual video footage itself. The app resides one step up on the device, on the phone, and the phone is getting its internet traffic off of a nearby cell tower, which is operated by AT&T. In order then to access everything at home, the information at home, it has to have the IP address, the 104.181 IP address. It hits the router back at home. Then it goes to the actual DVR system, a box. And the box is getting video from the cameras themselves. So that's kind of the route of travel as it goes from back home to the device, the phone.
Which would be consistent with all the different types of business records we just looked at.
Yes.
So we're going to interrupt. We're going to take our lunch and recess until 1:30. The admonition applies. You're not to discuss this case either among yourselves or with anyone else, or to form or express any opinion until the cause is finally submitted to you. Have a good lunch.
All right, so if you happen to still be on, the plan is now that they're on their big extended break, their lunch break, we are gonna hop over to see, we're gonna see the trial that's happening, and he was supposed to take the stand, but Zachary Hughes is supposed to take the stand and testify that he did, in fact, kill Christina Parcel, but evidently it was justified. So I'm hopping over there. I will finish the rest of Monica's in a part 2 after we finish the Zachary Hughes trial. So thank you for watching if you were here, and if you're hopping over there, I will see you then.